Welcome to the Her First podcast, a platform to help online business owners, coaches, and creators gain the confidence needed to build a successful business while creating a sustainable lifestyle balance. We are here to help you prioritize yourself in business and life. I'm Joanna Newton.
And I'm Michelle Puolani. In this podcast, along with the Her First Collective, you can engage in the challenges women face in business, ways to increase your impact or income online, and how to make it all work while launching, scaling, or maintaining. Spoiler, it's not about perfectionism, hustling, or a copy-paste methodology. Let's dive in.
If you have ever wondered if you can make a business out of something somewhat obscure, our guest today is the perfect example of monetizing your passion. Oftentimes, clients or audience members will look at competitors or digital gurus who are teaching something so obvious, like business, fitness, social media, how to find your soulmate. But what about all of those niche topics like knitting, handcrafted leather goods, or a particular passion for a certain culture? With the advent of online digital marketing and the knowledge economy, we are seeing opportunities everywhere. And our guest, Beeta Hashempour, is the perfect example of that. Beeta is owner of a digital lifestyle brand, Monetize, podcast host of The Life of the Bon Vivant, and show host of Joie de Vivre TV. She is the epitome of a Francophile, loving everything about France and French living. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Bonjour, and thanks for having me on. I'm so excited.
I'm sure you noticed that today we're missing our co-host, Michelle. She is traveling today and unable to be here for the interview, but you will be sure to hear her in our next episode. So when you launched your initial blog, Beeta, you didn't plan on becoming a true business, and the massive impact that you now have today was a bit unexpected. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to launch?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because even prior to starting my site and brand, I wasn't really a Francophile, which is basically someone who loves all things French. I made my first trip to France in 2010. My good friend was studying abroad there, and she told me, why don't you come on your Christmas break and visit me? I have a place here. You don't have to pay for a hotel and all of that. And I was still in college then. So, of course, that appealed to me. I just bought a plane ticket and made the trip there. I remember just stepping off of the last step of the metro station onto those cobblestone streets in Paris, and I was in love from first glance. And it looked like something straight out of a movie. I always say Paris is one of those cities that's even better than it looks like in the movies and TV. And I just had such an incredible time during that week with her. I was enamored by the people, the fashion, the architecture, and most especially the food. So when I came back home from that trip, I was in college still, but I was living in an apartment on my own, and I started ordering a ton of French cookbooks and started cooking all these French recipes to try to recreate what I had experienced in France, posting the recipes on a blog just for friends and family, because the thing with French food is a lot of French recipes can seem very complicated when in fact they don't really need to be. So I had simplified a lot that I had seen in books like Julia Child's book and made it home cook friendly. And so I guess that attracted a lot of random people on the internet too. And they started commenting and writing in how much they loved my blog and how it made them feel more connected to France. And I realized I wasn't the only one as obsessed with France as I thought I was. I realized that there was something there, and it could be something more than just like a hobby blog that I started.
I love your story because really what you're doing came out of a true passion. You just were enjoying what you're doing, thought, I'm going to share this with my friends and family. And then other people really caught on. And I spend a lot of time working with people who want to like monetize their knowledge, right? Monetize what they do and what they know. And sometimes their focus is so much on the monetization part and not the actual giving of value, right? You provided a place that connected with you, connected with other people, and were able to put all of that together.
100%. Because I think the whole reason a lot of us become entrepreneurs is to do something that we want to be doing and not being forced to do something for someone else the way you often are in most other jobs. The interesting part about that is that for me, I always grew up as one of those people that was a high achiever. I had to get like straight A's. My parents never even cared, but I was that weird child that was like, "No, I cannot get a B on a report card." And so I actually went to college with the plan to be a lawyer and go to law school after that. And I worked in a law firm during my college years, and I realized that was not at all what I actually wanted to be doing, and there was no joy in that. So for me, when I was working on this blog, it was purely something out of passion because if I had wanted to do something that was just going to make money, I could have just gone the law school route and become a lawyer. And that would have paid probably much better than many of the years when I started out my blog.
And so you've been able to really go from your career beforehand, taking something you love, turn that into your full time business. How does that contrast in what you were doing before? Or does it like complement what you're doing now? What has that experience been like?
When I left college, I was still working a full time job. So there were many years that my blog was making pennies. I wasn't really focused on the monetization. Even when I realized there were people interested in the blog, I had no clue what it meant to even monetize a blog. I didn't know really much about SEO or the fact that you could have ads running on your site or anything like that. But the advantage I did have was I was working for a digital company, an e-commerce company. I learned that blogs are used even by big businesses as a marketing endeavor. And so I took a lot of what I learned from my day jobs and applied that to the blog. And I remember actually one of my jobs, there was an SEO guru that I worked really closely with, and he taught me a ton. And it was actually with his knowledge that he passed down to me that I really started seeing big strides in my traffic on my site and learned about ad networks and all of that. So I think even today, I'm always a big fan of education and taking courses and improving my skills and knowledge, even now when I feel like I have obviously a much better understanding of what I'm doing than back in the day.
Now, I know a lot of our listeners are some are entrepreneurs, some are already business owners, and a lot of them are aspiring to be that, right? Aspiring to take their knowledge, turn that into a business. For anyone listening on our podcast today, if they're in that situation, they have a hobby, they have a passion, they want to turn that into their like full-time thing where they're able to monetize, what advice would you give them?
I think it's important to, one, pick something that you truly are passionate about and love. And that doesn't mean to ignore what the market could potentially want to, but even just picking like a niche that you're excited about will help tremendously because I think there's this myth that bloggers, digital entrepreneurs, influencers, all these people online have become like overnight successes. And it doesn't happen usually super quickly. I'm not saying that's always the case, but for a lot of people, if you talk to most entrepreneurs online, they'll tell you it took them years to really grow their brand or their business or get to a place where they feel like there's a flow and they're comfortable with the way things work in their business. And so I think it's really important that you pick something you like because when things are hard, you need that motivation and passion behind what you're doing. And then I would say to really treat your business like it's a business because I think for many years, I wasn't really growing at the rate that I would have liked because I was still looking at my blog as like this side thing. and not an actual business. You know, if you want to go open a restaurant right now, you're forced to think of it like a business because you have to rent a place, you have to hire employees, staff, a chef, all that. And so there's a lot of expenses with that. But because the sort of barrier of entry into the digital space is really low, a lot of people get in and think they don't have to invest in themselves or their business and take it as seriously as they probably should to really make impactful progress. So I would say find that thing you love and then take it really seriously and make a business plan and do all the things you do for a traditional business.
Yeah, I think that's so important to like think about your mindset with it, right? Like, how do you change your mindset to actually think of it like this is a business? And this is something I recently did in actually, it's about a year ago that I probably gave my notice for my full time job. And I've been working just my own company for about a year now alone. But there were stages to that. And we actually have a whole episode where I talk about the process of quitting my 9 to 5 and the things that I did to get there. And some of them were super practical things, thinking about insurance and your budget and all of that. And like when I felt comfortable making that decision. But a lot of that comes from actually starting to think of your business like a business. Even if you're part time because you have a full time job, setting yourself working hours for your business, goals for each day, goals for the quarter, goals for the year, like those things will help you treat it like a business. If you're like, I wake up and I work on my business the 2 hours before I start my day job, or it's at night, or it's Saturdays or Sundays, whatever works for you, actually thinking of it in that way can really help you with that transition.
Oh, definitely. The minute you decide you're going to start a project, a business, whatever it is, you're the CEO from the very beginning. And it's actually really helpful. I think sometimes people look at the fact that they're in a day job as a hindrance, but it's actually very helpful to have that income coming in from the side to help you not only pay for your regular life expenses, but potentially have some extra to reinvest in your business and hire the experts, buy the courses, the things that you need to really fast track the progress you make in your business.
Yeah, especially if you're a lot of times if you're looking at monetizing a passion or hobby, you're likely self-funding, right? So you don't necessarily have cash flow, you don't have an investor, you don't have someone that is footing the bill for you, letting your salary, like part of your salary, actually investing that into your business to help you grow that business can be really astounding. And I find a lot of early stage aspiring business owners are very scared to spend money on their business. Like they don't want to invest in a course. They don't want to invest in a tool that they need. They don't want to invest in an expert to say, if you have a blog, maybe having someone who's an actual web developer spruce up the blog and make it look a little bit better, actually investing in those things. Oft you'll see the ROI. You'll see like as long as you make smart, intelligent, informed decisions, you can see that come back to you.
Yeah, and so much of that is tied to, like you said, mindset. That's always a work in progress too. I was once at a stage where I thought spending like $400 on a course was, oh my goodness, $400 on a course. That was in the way beginning where I was entirely new to digital courses and I didn't really know what the ROI would be. I didn't know how impactful it would be. But obviously, as I took more education and saw the benefits of it, I got to a place where I was more comfortable spending thousands of dollars on a program to help me because I knew that a lot of times when you do make those investments, like you said, smart investments, not just buying whatever comes your way, but whatever truly you think resonates with you and is going to help you, you do usually do at least in my experience 10x what you've spent, you get back.
And I think some people have the opposite problem, right? They buy and they buy, they take all of the courses, they buy all the software, and they're like, when's the money going to come in? And I think there's like a balance between those two things, like not fear of investing, but also not fear of just moving forward. When I work with clients at creating an asset or a strategy or something like that, some people get stuck because they want to revise and revise and revise. And my thing is, let's get it as close to good as possible and then start going, right? Because I'm sure you look back at if you look back at your first blog post and what you write now, what's the difference?
Yeah, it's night and day because I had no idea what I was doing then. Now I do. Now I know when I write a blog post, it's not fluffy. It's actually gives value while ours also being strategic and being optimized for clearly search engines and whatnot. But I think the issue you see a lot too with entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs especially, is when they are on a buying frenzy and they're buying courses or coaches or whatnot. They're doing it one after another and they're not actually giving themselves time to implement what they learn. You'll see people like, oh, I signed up with this coach to learn how to launch my product. And then they do a launch and it flops. And then they're like, oh, that didn't work. I got to go buy now this course or that. No, like you have to spend time. You have to really give something a chance and stick to it. And I think consistency is huge in entrepreneurship. Yes, I am a big fan of education and courses, but with the caveat that you actually have to follow through with the action and implementation.
And I love that you brought up this idea of you go through a process, you find a coach, you plan a launch, and it flops. And maybe you get 0 sales. You needed 100 to cover costs and you only got 5. And you're like, what just happened? And those can be really important moments as a business owner because what you do next is actually the most important thing. Something flopped. What do you do? How do you move on? How do you adjust? How do you keep going? Because chances are, if you're trying something hard and different and new, you're going to have failing points, right? You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have, maybe mental blocks or setbacks or things that happen that you could say, okay, closing up shop. I'm done. I'd love to know from you if you've had a particular sticking point in your business or challenge and what that looked like.
I think for me, my first sort of challenge was getting over perfectionism. I would compare anything that I wanted to put out to these big brands and publications that have like millions of dollars of funding and incredible staff supporting them. And then I would look at my content and I'd be like, oh, it's not good enough. I can't put it out. And I had to get over that and realize that if I wanted to be successful in selling anything to my audience, I had to just try first and put it out there and let it evolve and become the thing that my audience wanted. So, for instance, when I launched a membership community, I initially launched it as like a baking focused community around French baking. And now, if you look, it's evolved into a complete French lifestyle community because over time, my members were saying, we want more than baking. We want cooking. We want fashion. We want home decor. We want all of it. So it's evolved. And I never would have been able to create the product that it is today had I not just gotten started and put something out there to even work with. So I think that was really huge in the beginning of my journey. And I think more recently, I've learned to not feel as icky about selling. I think that it's something as women, we tend to especially really struggle with is who are we to charge for our product or service? And men don't a lot of times think that way. They're just like, yeah, here's my product. It's 5K for my coaching container. It is what it is. And we as women are like, yeah, I have this coaching container and it's $1,000. We're like scared to even put it out there. And I've learned to accept that really any transaction is really just like an energetic exchange. And if you can deliver the value that you're charging someone, then you have to believe that person is adult enough to know what they can afford, what they can't afford, and make a financial decision for themselves and realize that them saying yes to you, whether it's your product, your service, whatever it is you're offering, is really them saying yes to themselves too. So if you don't put your stuff out there, you're not giving people that chance. And so that's been huge for me, especially as I've started selling more premium price products.
And you brought up so many interesting points. I think the difference between male and female entrepreneurs and their mindset towards charging and charging money for their services, for their costs is so fascinating. And this even shows up in the corporate world. I don't know the exact stat, but they talk about how like women will, when they read a job description, they'll need to feel like they can do 100% of the things on that list to apply. But a man will look at it and like if it's like 50%, that's not the right stat, but just pretend for a second it is, it's much lower where they'll confidently apply for that job. And one thing that helped me change my mindset about this for myself is one, replicating what I can do for someone over and over again. I can do it for a bunch of different people. I know I have something special. Two, realizing that what I have to offer is unique and is special and is of value, and that I can offer that to the world. The third thing that I think about is actually know my business costs at the end of the day. Like, I know what it costs to provide the level of forget my time, take my time out of it. I have a team, I have software subscriptions, I have all of these things. I know what it costs me to create that for you. And I need you to pay that much in order to make a profit for my business so that I can continue to do this and continue to uplevel my skills. There's also something recently that I have in my mind that I feel like I'm still working out is realizing that I don't charge an hourly rate for my time anymore. I know some people talk about thinking like, oh, I'm $10,000 an hour or something like that. Forget that. I don't charge an hourly rate for my time. I charge my value because I was on a discovery call with a client the other day and I gave her some insight about her offer of how she could position it better for free. And it technically took me 5 minutes to share that. I was talking with her, the idea sparked in my head, I shared it with her. That was all of the time, right? The technical time was 10 minutes. But that 10 minutes came from a lifetime of practice and knowledge and support, right? My brain, how it works from my first job to my last client, right? There was decades of experience that made that decision. So I shouldn't charge for the hour because it's not the hour that did that. It's my whole life in perspective. And I think when you can start to think through that, you go like, oh, I am worth that much.
Oh, 100%. It's definitely because what you're providing, again, it goes back to that value. It's about the value of what you're giving the client. It's not about the amount of time, even sometimes. Or, like, I know recently when I've started doing retreats for women, it's the value of my connections, my insights, who I know, or otherwise you could go and book a trip and the hotel and all the food and everything like that for much less than what you're paying to come to a retreat with me. But then you're not going to have my knowledge and experience infused into that. And so it's going to be a completely different experience and value that you're getting out of it. So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
And I want to encourage the people who are listening, like the examples I'm talking about, I have a lot of experience with. Beeta has a lot of experience with. But to be able to be a coach, you just need to be a few steps ahead of people, right? And that's how you grow your value over time. So when you started, you were just on a journey learning how to cook French food and you brought people along with you. You were a few steps ahead of your followers. Now you might be more steps ahead of your followers, and that changes over time. As long as you're just a little ahead of the game of them, you can help them along the way. I think there's also this like gift entrepreneurs have of like being able to figure things out. There's a lot of things that today I don't know how to do, but if someone were to have the idea, like because I help people create online courses, memberships, coaching programs, if they were like, I want to do this thing, even if I've never done it before, I know that I could figure it out at this point. You know what I mean? There's different levels to that. But as long as you're just a little bit ahead of the game, you can help people and you can help them on that journey.
Oh, yeah. We're scrappy as entrepreneurs. So we make things happen, and we oftentimes have the ideas and the vision that other people don't always have. And I think that's why we're attracted to entrepreneurship and are even in this situation. But yeah, it's exactly like you said. You don't have to be an expert when you first start. You just have to know a little bit more than the next person. And you're already able to provide value just from knowing a little more than someone else.
Exactly. And I want to come back. We grazed over something pretty cool you were talking about that I want to dive into a little bit deeper. One of your most recent offers was a 5-star luxury retreat in France, which sounds amazing. And this was sold at $13,000 a person. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, so I had always had this vision of creating like this dream escape to Paris. And I played around with the idea for a little bit, but honestly, I had never charged anything at that price level in regards to my audience that I have and what I've sold to them previously. So I wasn't sure how it would land. And honestly, I definitely had to regulate my nervous system, putting that email out there, making the offer. But I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? Again, this who am I to decide whether someone can afford this or not? I've put together this amazing itinerary. I know it's worth this money. And like you said, I know the costs of what the business requires to make this trip happen. And I know the value that I'm bringing. So I just have to be confident that there is someone out there who's looking for a trip like this. And so I put the offer out there and was so nervous, but it was amazing because very shortly it sold out. I was shocked, honestly, because again, I had my own doubts that someone could easily afford this, but there were people out there. And for me, it was just a confirmation that if you believe in something and you believe in the value that it provides, you'll always have that perfect customer for it. And again, it's not your business to decide what someone else can or can't do. It's only your business to be confident and 100% behind what it is you're putting out there. And so it was great because it not only made me now more comfortable with selling products at that level, but it reaffirmed my belief that there are people for every level tiered product.
And you were able to take that leap. And I think it takes time to feel comfortable taking that leap and saying, yep, this is what I want to do. This is what it costs. But you had that vision. You had the audience, which I think is really important here. Like you're listening to this and you want to be able to share your passion, share your journey, and be able to monetize that. Just start finding an audience. You just started writing a blog and it became this whole business where you're able to sell $13,000 a person luxury events. And you got to that point. You got there and you did that by connecting and giving people what they needed and providing really great value. And if that's something you want to do and you have a passion about for it, start a blog, start an Instagram account, start a Pinterest account, whichever medium feels good to you, and just start sharing that value. As you grow your audience too, your audience will tell you what they need. They'll be like, can we like in your membership, right? We want this, we want that. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And it will 100% grow from there.
Exactly. And I think just two things to quickly say to add because you pointed them out. It takes time to up level into each phase. Like I didn't go from launching nothing to a $13,000 product. My very first product, I think, was like a $69 pastry course. And I was like shaking in my boots when I put that offer out there back in the day. And so it does take time to mentally catch up to the next level of where you want to be. But just know it's also normal to still be nervous and scared when you are putting that next level offer or product out there.
When you're putting something out into the world, a new offer, even just a new piece of content, trying something different, trying something new, that can be scary. What sort of like belief system do you need when you're putting yourself out there?
I think it's really important to remember that you're not codependent on, first of all, the sale. And that's why I mentioned earlier in the conversation that it's helpful when you do have a day job when you're first starting out, because it gets rid of that icky energy of like you frantically checking your inbox every 2 seconds to see how many sales you've made or how many people have bought when you're not dependent for your basic needs in the beginning and you have that relaxed attitude. It really does make a difference to just have a cool and calm energy around selling something. So I think one, that's really important, but two, it goes back to the mindset issue of realizing it really is an energetic exchange. If I'm putting something out there, I really felt this when I was coaching. If I'm putting out a coaching container and a woman signs up for that, she is really saying yes to herself. She is taking this next step. Yes, she's working with me. Yes, she's paying me, but her signing up is her saying, it's time for me to receive this thing in my life. It's time for me to make this change or do whatever endeavor that I'm trying to do here. So when you think of it like that, then it's a lot easier to sell because you're thinking about the fact that if I don't put my offer out there, then this person is not having this opportunity to do this for themselves. So then it becomes like a service for you to be selling. And I think that helps a lot. And it's really important for making that shift. When you are building an audience, I think people get really wrapped up with the numbers. Oh, I need to have 200K followers on Instagram in order to make good sales or whatever. And it's more about the quality of those followers. I've worked on the flip side too, as someone who works for a corporation who hires out influencers, for instance, for brand sponsorships. And some of our most profitable partnerships came from the really small influencers that didn't have that many people, but they were quality people. They were actually interested in the product. I saw that reflected too on my side of things as an entrepreneur when I'm selling. I don't have a ton of followers, but the followers I do have are highly invested in my niche and are like me. They love all things French. You do want to build your audience, but make sure you're building quality followers too.
I love that you added that and you brought that up. It's something like I wholeheartedly believe in because you can have a big launch with a small following if they're the right people. I've seen that in my corporate work as well as my work with entrepreneurs. You can have 1,000 followers and be monetizing fantastically. You can have a couple 100,000 followers, even 1,000,000 followers, but because you don't have a clear path or niche or natural thing to monetize with, you're not going to necessarily see that success. So definitely don't be caught up in the numbers as you're getting started. Like you want the connections. And one of the analogies I always like is sometimes people be like, "Oh, only this video only got 300 views," right? That's something people will say. Like if you had a storefront and 300 people walked into your storefront one day, wouldn't you be ecstatic? You would. And that would be amazing, an amazing thing to do. And it's just about thinking about that mindset and what that looks like.
I love that analogy. I never thought of it that way personally, but that's a great example. And yeah, it's about like for me, I'm really excited when something hits off on Instagram that is very aligned with my brand, because then I'm like, yay, not only did this, I don't want to say viral because viral means it's gone crazy, but just gone a lot of views compared to some of my other posts. When that post is highly aligned with my brand and what I'm offering and it does well, I'm always stoked because I'm like, not only did this garner a lot of people seeing it, but the right people. Because if you're putting something that doesn't really have that much to do with what your focus is and it does well, cool. But at the end of the day, is it really going to be the thing that gets you the right customers? And to be honest, I have fun with Instagram and I definitely see the value in it, but most of my sales come from my email list. So just some food for thought too for anyone who's really stuck on the numbers on social media. I would encourage anyone listening who's new to entrepreneurship to really focus on their email list.
That's such great advice. One of the things that we love to talk about here on Her First is how we prioritize ourselves. So, as an entrepreneur, one of the whole points of it is to be able to build your ideal life, live the life you want, the schedule you want, in the way you want, with the goals that are right for you. So, I'd love to know how you prioritize yourself in business and in life.
I love this question too because I am a big fan of always working smarter, not necessarily harder. And for me, to be honest, this is something that I think I've really gotten better at in the past year of my entrepreneurial journey is learning how to delegate and hand things off and really act like the CEO by this point of where I'm at in my journey, but definitely even earlier on, shouldn't be doing the things that you could easily pay like a virtual assistant to be doing for you. The money is in the strategy thinking, in the things that not anyone else can do but me and my business. And so I've really learned that and adopted that in the past year. And it's given me back so much time to the point where I honestly only work like a couple of hours a day now. And I make that impactful and effective. And then I enjoy the rest of my time for myself. And, you know, when I was living in France, this meant I was able to be complete flaneur and walk around Paris and have long lunches and sit by the sun and take my dog for long walks at the park and enjoy my life and creating that balance of that, you know, work-life balance that all of us really crave and desire. If you're a starting entrepreneur and you feel overwhelmed and feel like your to-do list is long and you're really actually working double the amount that you ever worked in your corporate job, just know there is light at the end of the tunnel and there are resources that you can use that are available to you and that you should learn to use early on to create that work-life balance that you want.
Such great advice and so hard to do, right? Like delegating things, letting other people do that work, investing in that happening is hard, but can definitely pay off in the end. As we wrap up our conversation, it was so lovely to have you and hear about what you do and being able to turn this passion that you had into a business for yourself. If our listeners want to connect more with you, maybe they are also Francophiles and want to learn more about France and the French lifestyle, how can they find you?
Yeah, so if they head over to my site, monpetitfour.com, they can sign up to my email list and they're going to get a free e-cookbook on 10 French recipes that are easier to make than you think. This is always a big favorite. So make sure you sign up and you get that. You can also follow me on Instagram at monpetitfour or listen to my weekly podcast, The Life of a Bon Vivant, which is always a lot of fun. And if you do happen to have experience living in France or are a Francophile and want to share your story, then I always welcome guests on the podcast too.
Amazing. I hope that some of you who are Francophiles take her up on that offer. And if you do, let us know. We'd love to listen to that episode. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. I hope that folks who listen to this episode feel inspired to build an audience, share their passion, share their value, and put themselves out there.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in the Her First Collective, a free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?